Hello, this is exercise 1 for Inventor 2014, and we'll proceed with working on this model that you see right here. It's going to have some very basic features on it, and then we'll do a couple little more advanced things on it. Really, they're not all that advanced, but let's begin. First, let's go up to the top of the little eye here, and you could go just to New. You could select Standard Eye Part, hit Create. And now what we're going to do, I just want to introduce you over to the left here. This is the Feature Manager design tree. And I'm going to hit the little plus next to Origins, and you'll see there's planes there. There's several ways to start a sketch. We're going to first select the plane that we want to sketch on. In this case, the XY plane happens to be the front plane. So we'll select the XY plane. When you do that, you'll see a little button appear here in the center, Create Sketch. Go ahead and click on that. This is your origin. This is your center 0, 0, 0 for X, Y, and Z. You can delete that point, but be careful because put it back, you have to add a relationship and snap it back in. It's kind of a pain. So let's just try not to delete that point. But anyway, we're going to go with the rectangle tool first. There are several types of rectangle tools here. If you hit the little arrow underneath, you'll see center rectangles and things like that. We're going to go with a 2-point rectangle. Glide up to the origin right there. You'll see it will snap to it. Click once with the left mouse button and drag to the upper left. Now before you hit anything, look at that. You could type in numbers. See the 0.436 is highlighted in blue. Yours is probably a different dimension, but it's telling us where we're at right now. Well, in this case, we need to create a 3 by 5 inch rectangle. So if we type in 3 and do not hit enter. Just hit tab on your keyboard. On the left-hand side of your keyboard, find tab. Hit tab, and it will snap to the next, the vertical actual dimension. That's there. And we want to type in 5. And now you could hit enter once you're done. Now you might not see everything, but you could over here you could click on front, that little picture right there, and it will zoom to fit. All right, now you can see it's a 3 by 5 rectangle. We're going to go ahead and hit Finish Sketch. And up here, if you want, you could actually go to the little Home. Home brings you to an isometric view of that sketch. And so now we could select the type of feature we want. Now you can pre-select features and go into the sketch. That's another way I'll show you a little bit later on that you can do. They're both relatively easy. Here I'm going to go to Extrude. And now we can actually see the depth of extrusion here. In this case, it's going 1 inch. Over here, this gives you just more details. Over here, it's just a simplified version. You can actually minimize this by hitting this little arrow here if you don't want to see it and just use this, or use them both. It doesn't really matter, whichever one you find easier. You can also grab this little orange arrow and drag it in and out until you get it to the proper thickness. In this case, I managed to snap it to 1/2 inch, 0.5. If you haven't snapped it to 1/2 inch, just click on there and hit 0.5, and you could hit enter, and that will automatically finish or complete your solid. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a little boss on the front here. So go ahead and just get your pointer on top of that, and if you left click, you'll find there's 3 options now. You have the ability to edit the extrude. That would allow you to change the extrusion depth. You have the ability to edit the sketch. That brings us back to that 3 by 5 rectangle, and that would allow us to change that. We don't want either of those. We actually want the one on the far right, which is to create a new sketch. It just says Create Sketch, actually. Go ahead and click on that. And it should orient us normal to our surface that we're sketching on. Now let's go back to rectangle up here, 2-point rectangle. Now you could take the line tool and draw a rectangle yourself. We'll get to that in a little bit, but right now let's just use rectangles. They're pretty easy. Go ahead and click on this lower left-hand corner. Drag it up. Now you have the ability here to type in values, but we actually want to establish a relationship instead. As you know, earlier in the book, it talks about relationships, which are basically common elements of geometry like parallelism, concentricity, coincidence, different things like that, tangency. You could establish those automatically by snapping to this, or you could go to the top where it says Constraints and add them. But in this case, just snap to this right edge. Don't worry about the 3-inch dimension or the 1.5 that needs to be put in on the right. Just go ahead and click, and now you have a rectangle. Now you could go to the dimension tool and add the dimension. So you could click on dimension here, move your pointer back to the right, and click on that short little line there, drag it to the right, click again, and type in 1.5 and hit enter, and you'll see it will automatically adjust the sketch to make it exactly 1.5 inch. Alright, now at this point I'm going to click on the home button again, and we want to hit finish sketch up here and go to extrude. Now here it's looking for a profile for us to select. We could select this profile or this one. This is the one we want to extrude out, so click on that. And it's already set to 0.5, which just so happens to be the dimension we needed to extrude. But you could change it if you needed to. But just leave it and hit the green check mark to apply. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop a hole in here. Now there is a hole feature which we'll get to in a couple weeks, or actually if you're going through these lessons you could go through them much quicker than that and catch up. But I don't want to throw too much at you in the first exercise here. Instead, we're just going to go ahead and click on this face, and remember there's edit extrude, there's edit sketch, and create sketch. We want to create a new sketch in this case. So on that one on the far right. Find your circle tool. Notice there's a couple different types of circles. There's tangent circles and just center point. Let's go with center point. Glide up to the upper left area right around where my pointer is, and click and drag out a circle. And as you're dragging it out, before you click a second time, go ahead and just type in the value. It's supposed to be 0.75 on your keyboard. You can type that in. Now we need to locate it. You could use the dimension tool up here again to locate it. Click on dimension, select the center point of the circle, and then select this top edge. Move it to the left. You should see a dimension now. Click again to drop the dimension and allow you to edit it. Type in 1. You don't have to type in 1.00. If it's just a whole number like that, just type in 1 and hit enter. Let's do that again. Click on the center point, and this time click on the vertical left edge. Drag it straight up. Click to drop it, and type in 1 again. You could hit the green check mark as well, or enter. Alright, now that that's done, let's click on home here. Actually, first let's hit finish sketch. And actually drop this isometric. So we really didn't have to click on home. That would have brought us back. But if you ever wanted to rotate, remember you could click on this box and rotate it with your left mouse button. You can also rotate with the middle mouse button depressed, or if you have a scroll. Not everyone realizes that scroll, you could actually push it down like it's a button and hold it there. And if you hold shift along with it, first hold shift I should say on your keyboard, then push down that middle button, it will rotate dynamically. So that's another option for you. Up here too, if you can play with some of those buttons there. Anyhow, let's now go to extrude again. So find extrude. Now, extrude could also remove material. Go ahead and select the profile that you want to extrude. That's this hole that we're going to create. Now you see it's actually extruding a mass outside of the part, or away from it, or a boss. We actually want to reverse that. You could grab this and drag it in, or you could actually there's a little flip switch right here. Or if you're over here, you can just click on here and go with direction 2. Notice there's symmetric, so you could go both sides, or asymmetric if you want them to be on both sides but different depths, like maybe 1 inch on one side, ½ inch on the other. But we're going to go with direction 2. It automatically knew to select this little button right here. This is to remove material. The one above it is actually to add material, and this is to intersect material. Remove material is important when you're making a hole. It's actually going to make the opening that we see there. Also, the extents for the distance. Well, the thickness of this part is actually ½ inch. But if it ever changes, and changes come down the line all the time when you're making drawings, you're best off, if you know it's going to be a through hole, select all, which means through all basically. And that's what they call design intent. It's thinking in advance how that model might update and areas that you don't want to have to go back and worry about. So by selecting through all, no matter what changes come down, it's always going to stay through, versus someone might change this to 3/4 of an inch thick. Then you have a 1/2 inch hole, and you'd have to change that too. This way, you don't have to worry about it. Go ahead and hit OK. And there's our hole. Now, in the book, this is about as far as we go with that lesson, but I just want to show you a couple other little tidbits. Let's go to the fillet tool. Fillet tool is a really nice feature. Fillet puts a radius or a blend on things. And for example, you can see the radius is defaulting to 0.125 there. But go ahead and I want you to select this edge right here. It's almost like you're attacking it with a file. Like let's say you want to file it down. You select the edge that you would contact with the file. I know some of you come from the AutoCAD world, two-dimensional world. It's a change in thought. In those softwares, you would select these two edges and expect a fillet to come in between it, because you're in the two-dimensional world. You can't see this edge normally on the view that you want to put the fillet on. But here, you select the edge as if you were actually making it in real life. So you select that face, and you'll see a little preview in blue. Now there's a little orange arrow there. You could grab the arrow and push it with the left mouse button down and drag it in, and you could see, you could get it to pretty much most average dimensions, or you could type in a new value for it, like 0.75. Now you could add additional ones. Let's add one over here, this little edge. Click on that, and it will pick up the 0.75. Those two are linked. If you ever change a dimension, they will change together. You can disjoin them too. But right now, let's just go ahead and hit the green check mark. So now we have some fillets in there. Again, if you hold Shift on your keyboard, hold your middle mouse button down, and you can drag and rotate this around. Let's see what you've done. Let's go ahead and go to the Sham Fur tool now. Click on Sham Fur. Sham Fur puts an edge on it versus a radius or a blend. And in this case, we'll stick with 0.125. Go ahead and select this edge here, and it will know to carry around the tangent edges, but it knows to stop at sharp edges. So wherever there's a radius, it will carry around all the way. Okay, put it on this edge down here at the bottom as well. Again, you have that little arrow you can move back and forth, but we'll leave it at this 0.125. Go ahead and hit OK again. If you hold Shift and your middle button, push it down, you could rotate this around. And I'd like it to rotate around. Tinker with rotating around a little bit. You're moving your mouse left and right, up and down here. And get it to where you're looking kind of at that view that you see right here on my screen. Take a minute to get it right. Because what we're going to do next is I'm going to show you the Shell tool. The Shell tool is pretty cool. You click on it up here. And what it does is it allows you to remove specific thickness of material and select faces that are supposed to be open. So like right now it's set to 0.1, but let's set to 0.06, so 60 thousandths wall thickness. Now you just select the faces you want to have opened up. So if we're making an enclosure, let's say that the front we saw earlier is what we want in the front of the enclosure. The back side, we can just click on this face here. You see a preview in blue of what's being removed. Go ahead and select this side face as well. And this one over here. That's if you want all those removed. Go ahead and hit the green check mark when you're ready. Take a look at that. You've made a thin wall enclosure. If you want, go back to home here, and let's take a look at some coloring options. If you select the face, you could go over here to this little color wheel, Appearance Gallery. Now, inside here you'll find some standard colors and things like that you could double click on. You see a preview affected. Okay, there's even glass and things like that. You could also create your own custom colors. Like if you right click on this default, and if you go to duplicate, now you can change it. Let's say we want to change this to orange. I'll call orange 2. And now right click on it, actually double click on it. And over here under generic, you see color RGB 191, 191, 191. That's just gray. Hit the little arrow and hit edit color. Now you could select from these colors here. Like maybe I'll go with orange there. Or I could go to define custom colors And just from the options here, I can move around until I find the orange that I like. And hit OK. There's also shades here too. And you'll see that face will turn to orange. Now you have the ability to do some other things here too. You could give it a little bit more glossiness, make it a little flat, or whatever you want to do. In this case, you could select metallic, non-metallic. On this case, a flat surface, you don't see a whole lot with metallic. It doesn't change it, but on like radiuses, you'll see a lot more. You could click on reflectivity as well. Gives it more of a reflective effect. Go ahead and hit apply. You could do this with other faces too. Cancel. And there we've changed the color of that particular face. Now if we want to change everything, we could click at the top of this part. And then let's go ahead and we'll actually make that. Let's go with this, see it, double click on it. Okay. And actually I didn't do it, sorry. Right click and let's do that again. Click on that. Right click, assign to selection if you right click. There we go. Notice the orange trumps the blue. So if you select individual faces for specific colors, they override the whole part. Or you could even select features, like for example the shell feature here on the back side. If we find the shell feature in the feature tree, just click on that and find another color. Let's go with this green. Right click, assign to selection. And now just that feature is green. Go ahead and close that. Now also, you might not be getting the shadow effects or the ground plane reflection. Those are found under View, and you can turn on shadows here, reflections, and under Visual Style, I like to have shaded with edges on. It puts the edges on so it looks a little bit crisp and clean so you can actually see what's going on almost all the time. Turn on shadows there. You can have some fun with that. There's also realistic. If you click on realistic, it gives you a temporary photorealistic. Actually, if you click on ray tracing, especially, it'll give you a nice near realistic image. It takes a while, though, as you can see at the bottom. And this is just a temporary view that you'll see. As soon as you rotate it, it goes back to what we saw earlier. And you can see the ray tracing takes a while. Like here, the progress is very slow. But it depends on what quality, if you want good or best or interactive. I'm just going to go with good. I'm going to reduce it a bit. Notice it goes a bit faster versus best quality. And we're down to just around 10 seconds for it to complete. But it gives us a nice effect. It's nice for portfolio pieces. You have to tweak it a little bit, work on it a while to get it to look really sharp, but anyhow. Remember to disable it, you can just click on ray tracing again to turn off. And Visual Style will go back to shaded with edges. Now to save this part, just go to the little disk that's up here, or Control S. And I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to call it capital E1. And actually, I'll name it Inventor, because I have so many different file types on here. And that really is exercise, that completes exercise 1. Now there's 2 additional labs in the book that usually I'd like you as students to go through them on your own. I even tell you here, patterns and arrays will be covered in the future, but for these exercises, don't try those. Don't try using patterns and arrays or mirrors just yet. If you feel you want to, go for it, but I don't want to throw too much at you right now. Anyhow, let me show you how you can make these 2 parts. They're relatively simple. Spoiler alert, don't watch this if you want to practice. The better you'll be if you do it on your own and try, and then you could go back and see how I did it. There's multiple ways of doing this. Okay, so let's begin. For this exercise, we'll go back to New, and we could actually click on this little arrow. This is a little different way of bringing it in. Just go to Part. That eliminates that need for that little screen that we saw earlier that said Create. It's up to you which way you want to do it. Okay, I'm going to go down. Actually, I'm going to show you another little trick here. Rather than selecting the plane like we did before under Origin, you could just do this. You could just click on Extrude. If we know we want to make an extruded feature, we could click on it. And then it gives us Create 2D Sketch. Click on that. Look at that. It brings up the planes that we saw earlier. This way you just select the plane that you want. In this case, this one looks good. This is usually our front plane here. And now we could select the rectangle tool once again, just like we did before. Click on the origin, drag it out, and this time it's 5 by 3 versus 3 by 5 for this next one. I'm actually skipping the L1. That one's a good practice one too. I'll go through that just after I'm finished with this. Is L1B in your book. So anyway, 5, and then if you recall, you have to hit the Tab key on the keyboard, type in 3. Now you can click on front, it will zoom to fit. And look at this. That wasn't there before when we started a sketch on a plane by ourselves. When we click on Extrude first, it allows it to go right to it, or you could hit Finish Sketch. I'm going to click on Extrude. Okay, zoom out. Now this needs to be 1.5 inches thick. Alright. Now the next thing we're going to do, we could attack this in 2 separate ways. We could draw a little rectangle to cut out through the center. If you're looking at the web page, remember vertanu1.com, you could go to the Inventor manual and you'll see this. We're not on L1, we're actually on L1B or Lab 1B. And you can see we have to make a little cutout, 1.5 inches, and it's centered. So I'm going to actually attack it from the top, just to be different. I'm going to select this face and start a sketch. And I'm going to take the center rectangle. And I'm just going to click and drag that out until it snaps to this edge. Now I could type in 1.5, but I want to establish that relationship. Now I haven't shown you how to establish relationships manually. That's coming up soon though, but I could have gone coincident and selected the edge and this edge here. Either way. But now I'm going to go to the dimension tool and dimension this. This is supposed to be 1.5. And from the center to this edge will be 2.5. And then we need to put a dimension here of 1 inch. Okay, and guess what I'm going to do with that? I'm going to hit Finish Sketch. I'm going to go to Extrude, select that profile. I want to reverse it. If you remember, there's the flip switch here. And see, it's starting to remove material. I need to click on Cut, which is to remove material. And again, I want All. Now, if you were coming off the front face, you would only go 1 inch deep. But this needs to go through All. Hit OK. Now you can start a new sketch on this face. Now we're going to draw on those holes. So the circle tool we could use for this. And we'll just draw these in. And you could actually, I believe that's the wrong diameter. Let me just check the book here. Yep, they're both supposed to be a 1/2 inch, and then they're 0.75 off each edge. So let me go over here. I'm just going to hit Escape on my keyboard. If you ever need to get out of a tool, just hit Escape. It usually works. Now this is nice about this being a parametric model, where you could double click on the dimension and change it. And now I'm going to proceed to draw the additional circles. I could lock into that center. Again, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Again, mirroring will be covered as well as patterns in the upcoming lessons. I'd like you just to try it this way first. So again, from the center point to this edge, 0.75. Now you could do these as well, but watch this. Instead of using the dimension tool, turn it off. We will substitute relationships, and in this case constraints. And we have horizontal and vertical constraints. So if I go with horizontal, I can make this point to this point. Same goes with this one, this to this. Now we'll go with vertical, line this point to this point. The one that's constrained, notice the color is dark blue. The ones that are underdefined, don't have all the dimensions needed yet, are still green. So let's constrain this and this. Okay. We could have also made them all equal. There's an equal option there. Instead of putting the dimensions in, I could have selected the circles, made them equal in diameter. Okay, now I'm going to go to Dimension tool. We'll have to add a couple additional dimensions, like the center point here to this edge, 0.75. Notice it's fully constrained now. And then the center point to this edge, 0.75. Now those are fully constrained. The reason why I didn't need to put this dimension on all those is because we added a constraint of horizontal and vertical between those center points. Now we just rotate it a little bit, finish sketch, extrude, and you have to go and you have to select these holes. Okay, and you're going to hit flip switch. The distance is all, so it goes through all, and hit OK. Again, you can have a little fun with this. If you go to the fillet tool, you could select these edges. And let's put a little bit larger radius on there, maybe a ½ inch. Apply. Let's go back to that Sham Fur Tool. 0.125 is pretty good. Apply. And let's try shelling it. Go to the shell command. Keep it at 0.1 maybe. Select this face, back, just that one face, and hit the green check mark. And take a look at that. Again, if you want to change some colors, you could go back, we could select the shell, go to the color wheel, and we could select from the list of options here, assign a selection, that yellow. And there we go. Now the L1, the first one, let's start, actually save these as a little I up the top, save as, and we'll call this L1B. Okay. Now let's go and start another new part. Click here, new, click here, and just go to part. Again, we'll go to Extrude, hit Create 2D Sketch, select this plane. The way the planes work, basically, if you're sketching something that looks like it's going to be hanging on a wall, like a wall clock, you would select what you see here, which looks like it's a wall, standing vertically. If you're sketching something that's going to go on a desktop, like let's say a lamp, you might want to start it on this plane down here. If you get a right side view from someone of the profile, you might want to start on the right plane that's there. But we'll start on this one here. Click on that. And now for this next exercise, let's see here, the lab I should say, we want to go ahead and just make this geometry. It's 2 by 3.5, and then it has some little things going on there. So I'm going to use the line tool. This is a good exercise for the line tool. So I'm going to drag this out, and we'll type in 3.5. Now to end the chain, you can hit escape on your keyboard. Go back to line, click, this is going to be 2. Just make sure that's right. Yeah, 2. Then 1, and then 3/4 of an inch. So we just keep going, kind of stair-stepping it. At this point, if I'm not sure, because I don't want to flip back and forth on what all these dimensions or the steps are, just kind of put them in how you think they're going to go. Looks pretty good. And then we can infer to the end. Now you could go to dimension and add those last dimensions. This is a 0.875. Let's look at the print again. I'm sorry, that's actually a 0.85. So we could just double click on it. And then the next one, from here to here is 1 inch. Basically, you just put in dimensions as you see them. So from here to here, that's 1.75. And this one from here to this edge is, I believe, 2.5. Did I get it correct? Looks good. So now we just hit extrude, and it's only supposed to be a depth of 1/2 inch. And that concludes this exercise.